Tonight, we will focus on the Melissae, the oracular bee nymphs of ancient Greece. The Melissae are considered divine messengers, conduits for prophecy, speakers of divine truth, and a source for inspired thought and song.
Today we share some of the ancient Greek folklore associated with the bees, as well as some ceremonies and techniques for interacting with bees. It is mid-August. Springtime came in full swing, and now we are in summer. Both spring and summer are bee season. Everybody's buzzing around all the plants and flowers.
I didn't see a lot of bees in my yard. However, since I began the creation of our food forest, which some of you know about, almost instantly I was able to and continue to be visited by bees, dragonflies, butterflies, and ladybugs, which to me is really super exciting because it tells me that I'm doing something right. I opened my back door to look out at the garden, and there's a bee. And they're hovering over my anise, which is this purple flower that you see right here. The anise plant, which is kind of licoricey and smells delicious and makes awesome tea, gives these purple spiked flowers, and that's one of my bees on the flower. And they love the sunflowers when the sunflowers were alive. They just are here like comfortable guests. They fly around the gardens, just close to the patio door, and then turn around and fly off again to who knows where. I made them a watering bowl with pebbles and rocks and little stones so that they don't drown, and they're there at that bowl every day. And the birds drink from it too, of course, and they have a few bird baths. And there's the little ladybugs who excite me to no end. So it was during the first days of March, the air season, known for its winds and also a time of nesting. And when all this COVID madness started, that I began to seriously think about bees and what I could do to help them. In my personal practice, in my magic room, I opened up myself to bee energy. Honestly, I'm allergic to bee stings, so I was a little apprehensive, but then I decided to make a pact with the bees. So I said, I will make room for you. I will not bother you when you visit, and you will not sting me. And so far, it is working. I actually talk to them full conversations when they visit. If some non-witchy person were to see me, well, they would think the same thing that they think when they see me in my front yard hugging my giant oak trees, which I have 3, that, you know, I'm really eccentric or just plain out nuts. And that's okay. You know, I smile and wave at them, and the ones that do anything at all just give me a shy wave and move on really, really quickly. Mission accomplished for me. I am on my own with my bees and trees and critters.
The bee is the most industrious of gatherers. There are over 20,000 species of bees that we've recorded on Earth, and most of them do not conform to popular assumptions of what a bee is. Bees can be solitary or social, stingless or deadly, and only 7 species, yes, that's only 7 out of 20,000 plus, which produce honey. But as a whole, they constitute the largest percentage of the Earth's flowering plant pollinators. So they are absolutely vital to the health of our world and the health of our planet. The most well-known bee in the West is the Apis mellifera, the European honeybee, which has been domesticated for over 8,000 years.
As with most of Earth's creatures, honeybees are nothing but spectacular. The hive, which you see here in particular, is a study in order, balance, and devotion, with anywhere from 20,000 to upwards of 60,000 bees working together at once to sustain their colony through foraging. They are organized and work as a collective. They dance their messages to their colony, and one colony can be responsible for pollinating nearly 20 million flowers per day. Birch?
Yeah. There is much wisdom to be gained from observing the bees, not just the common honeybee, but also our wild and non-honey producing bee species as well. Bees are considered divine messengers, conduits for prophecy, speakers of divine truths, and a source for inspired thought and song.
I just want to take a quick moment to talk about pronunciation. You'll notice that I say melisse to talk about the bee nymphs in plural. And there's very many different ways of saying this, so I just wanted to give you a little background. In ancient Greek, the word melissa is for singular bee, and the word melisse is for plural. But in modern Greek, they say melissa for a singular bee and melisses for plural bees. In English, I found lots of different pronunciations of the word also. Sometimes you'll hear melisse or melissol or melissa or melisses. So there's very many different words of the way to say it and different pronunciations for the same word. I just like melisse. I don't know why. It just seems to roll easily off my tongue. But like I said, the actual Greek word or Greek way of saying plural would be melisse, not melissa the way I say it, but I just like it.
In ancient Greek, the word melisse means honeybees, and it is also used to mean a bee nymph, a nature spirit that nurtures, protects, and essentially is the essence of honeybees. These melissae can be found in many of the same places as other nymphs, mountains, forests, and meadows, but especially near shaded, freshwater springs. Some say that the ancient Greeks believed honeybees to be asexual and born from the corpses of bulls offered in sacrifice, bulls being a sacred symbol of fertility. To the ancient Greeks, honeybees were simultaneously a symbol of chaste purity as well as regeneration, and their swarms were sometimes likened to a gathering or dispersing of souls.
For this reason, the term melisse was also used to describe chaste priestesses who were dedicated to goddesses responsible for agriculture cycles and the mysteries of life and death. Specifically, Demeter's Eleusinian priestesses were sometimes called melisse, and her daughter, the goddess Persephone, was sometimes referred to as the honeyed one and addressed with various other epithets beginning with meli, meli being the Greek word for honey, to imply her youth, beauty, purity, and of course, springtime. As the queen of the underworld, Persephone was allowed to cross from the land of the living to the land of the dead and back again only with the changing of the seasons, linking her intimately, like the bee, with the cycles of nature and the birth-death cycle.
As for the chaste goddess Artemis, she was a protectress of newborns and patron of midwives, who ushers new souls into the world. So it is not surprising that her priestesses at Ephesus were also called melisse. Dwelling as they often do in rock clefts, caves, and tree hollows, these are easily associated with the underworld. Passing through narrow crevices that symbolize gateways, the melisse act as mediaries or messengers between the realms able to share the wisdom of the earth with mortals.
Bees were also called the birds of the muses, another reference to the bees as messengers, as birds were also associated with omens and the delivery of divine knowledge, and they are often a source of divine inspiration, prophecy, and song.
For this reason, the Malice also came to be associated with the Olympic gods of prophecy, Hermes and Apollo. In the Homeric hymns, we hear Apollo say that he was actually taught the art of prophecy by 3 Malice dwelling in the caves of Mount Parnassus near Delphi. And from the Homeric hymns, the English translation by Hugh G. Evelyn White we have, there are certain holy ones, sisters born, 3 virgins gifted with wings. Their heads are besprinkled with white meal, and they dwell under a ridge of Parnassus. These are teachers of divination, apart from me, the art which I practiced while yet a boy, following herds, though my father paid no heed to it. From their home they fly now here, now there, feeding on honeycomb and bringing all things to pass.
And when they are inspired through eating yellow honey, they are willing to speak truth. But if they are deprived of the gods' sweet food, then they speak falsely as they swarm in and out together. That passage from that message seems to me to contain both a blessing and a warning. Honey is a precious gift, the consumption of which inspires truth-telling, wisdom, and calm order. But all beekeepers know that there must be moderation when harvesting from the hive. If you take too much honey, the bees will not survive the winter. We are reminded of the bees' centrality to existence, bringing all things to pass, and we are warned that if we deprive the Malice of their golden food, we could instead inspire a swarming chaos.
Much like the bees themselves, honey is a conduit for divine blessing, inspiration, and truth. The Malice are credited with nurturing Zeus and Dionysus with honey in their infancy, a way of showing the earth's blessings of the new Olympian gods. And the Muses, who in their earliest form were probably nymphs of freshwater springs, are also said to bestow honey upon the lips of gifted philosophers, poets, and singers. Some stories say that those mortals lucky enough to be muse-blessed, such as Plato, Homer, and Sappho, were actually fed honey by bees as infants, much like the gods.
Honey, water, and mead were probably some of the very first offerings made to the ancestors, and there is a strong case to be made that ambrosia itself, that notorious food of the gods, was in fact golden honey.
It's also interesting to note that one of the 3 original Malice who taught Apollo the art of prophecy was called Daphne. Daphne, whose name means bay laurel, was said to be an oracle nymph on Mount Parnassus long before Apollo's arrival on the mountain. Once Apollo established his center at Delphi, the oracle priestess of his temple came to be called the Pythia, but was also referred to as the Delphic bee, a nod to her origins as one of the original oracular Malice of the caves of Mount Parnassus.
But right now, bee populations worldwide have been threatened by massive deforestation, climate change, and other factors. Indigenous bees in particular are threatened when traditional agriculture gives way to clear cutting, monoculture, and pesticides. Fewer bees means fewer pollinators, fewer crops, and less plant diversity. Native stingless bees nest in hollow trees and ground cavities and provide valuable ecosystem services by pollinating native flora in dry tropical forests, as well as valuable cash crops. A growing body of research shows that over 40% today of insect pollinators are highly threatened globally, including our native bees.
Pollinators are responsible for nearly 1 in every 3 bites of food that we eat. The numbers aren't improving for bees in the US, and scientists still haven't figured out what exactly is causing the problem. In 2019, American beekeepers reported losing about 41% of their honeybee colonies, a 3% increase in the loss recorded in the same period for 2017. Since the colony collapse trend was detected, scientists have been working intensely to try and figure out its cause. It may wind up being a combination of factors. Likely reasons include the proliferation of parasitic varroa mites that can spread disease and viruses into bee colonies, the use of pesticides on crops, and even warming temperatures. Amid this population plummet, however, one threat remains under our control: pesticides. While pesticides are designed to kill pests and insects that harm crops, they also have unintended consequences. Pesticides can wipe out entire species, even ones not targeted. This includes bees and insects, essential to many crop yields. Bees don't only pollinate foods we eat, they also pollinate food eaten by birds and other mammals. Birds pollinate wild berries and nuts, as well as alfalfa, food eaten by domesticated livestock.
Take bees out of the equation, and the effects can be felt all the way up the food chain. The food chain's vulnerability is more apparent when looking at certain crops. Cherries and blueberries, for example, are 90% dependent on honeybee pollination, and almonds are completely dependent on honeybee pollination. And then there's the economy. Bees alone contribute $15 billion annually to the US agriculture, and pollinators contribute approximately $24 billion to the US economy. Besides pollinate-heavy crops like fruits, vegetables, and nuts, other crops like cotton and other foods we don't instantly think of when we think of bees, like coffee, tea, and chocolate. Entire industries produce various beeswax and honey-based goods.
Together, bees affect multi-billion-dollar industries that, if they collapse, could put tens of thousands out of work and send shockwaves through the economy. Bees are part of nature's delicate balance. Bees have evolved into mega-pollinators over millions of years, and plants have adapted to incorporate bees into their life cycle. Bees disappeared quickly, plants would not have time to adjust. Instead of adapting, many plant species would simply die off. And that's not just food crops. Flowers and trees need pollinators.
Bees are the poster children of a larger environmental crisis, but their rapid disappearance reflects the threats many pollinators face. One of the best ways to honor bees, not just honeybees, but also the wild, non-honey producing varieties, is to nurture native flowering plants in your garden. to create habitats that are welcoming to the nesting habits of both solitary and social bees, and advocate the ban of pesticides that are harming the world's bees.
For those of us who use bee products, such as honey, propolis, beeswax, bee pollen, or royal jelly, you can also support local beekeepers who ethically and sustainably manage their hives. You can choose to be more conscious about the amount of bee products you consume and actively offer reciprocity through fostering wild and domesticated bee havens in your community. You may also want to create a special space in your garden or balcony, on a windowsill, or even inside your home, where you can grow bee-loving plants, offer small bowls of honey, and display any items or talismans that represent bees, such as hexagons, carved beeswax statues, miniature keps, grain basket, or drawings of bees.
Tied as they are to the cycle of spring's pollination, summer's bounty, and winter's hibernation, bees have so much wisdom to teach us about living in balance with the seasons. The bee is a powerful ally when performing ceremonies for the dead, welcoming newborns into the world, or in contemplating the deep cyclical mysteries of birth and death. Honey can be shared during ceremonies as a blessing or as a conduit for inspiration, either through eating the golden food, drinking mead, applying it directly to your skin, or placing a small bowl outside for the Melisse to enjoy.
Even drinking a regular cup of tea can be transformed into a ceremony by consciously adding a teaspoon of honey and whispering a devotion or stating your intention. Understanding the properties, both medicinally and energetically, of the tree or flowers from which the honey is made can also impart particular power to your ceremony. Spending time near bee-pollinated plants in the garden and into the wild, it is easy to be lulled into trance by the buzzing of their wings and their hypnotizing movements.
It is also almost meditative to sit where the Melisse are gathered and to watch them as they move from flower to flower, their small bodies swaying from the weight of pollen and their droning buzz, the perfect soundtrack for inspired thoughts to emerge. As a gatherer and messenger of divine wisdom, the bee is also a powerful ally for oracles, poets, writers, singers, or anyone who uses words to express truth and share ideas. They are very tied to the element of air, and the Melisse can thus be called upon whenever you need clarity of thought, eloquence, or creative inspiration. Before starting a creative project, you could light a beeswax candle, enjoy a teaspoon of honey, or simply call on the Melisse to bless your lips and your pen so that you will write inspired words and share divine truths. And with this in mind, we will prepare and get ready to begin our ritual for the bees.